The human body is made out of chemicals, where atoms are the smallest units of matter. Atoms are grouped as elements, and there are 26 elements found in the human body. 99% of those elements are made up of nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, where 1% are made up of the trace elements. Carbon creates the structure of living organisms, where hydrogen and oxygen in the form of water make up 80% of living things. Atoms have subatomic particles known as protons, neutrons, and electrons. Carbon's atom has 6 protons, so its atomic number is 6. Whereas nitrogen has 7 protons and its atomic number is 7. Mass number is the calculation of adding the protons to the number of neutrons. The mass number for this carbon atom on the left, with 6 protons and 6 neutrons, equals 12. Where the mass number for the atom on the right, nitrogen, having 7 protons and 7 neutrons, is 14. Atoms with the same number of electrons as protons are neutral. In the case of these two atoms, carbon with 6 protons and 6 electrons is neutral, and nitrogen with 7 protons and 7 electrons is neutral. A molecule is 2 or more atoms chemically combined. Examples are oxygen gas, sodium chloride or salt, and water. These combinations of atomic symbols and numbers make up what is called the chemical formula. What holds these atoms together are known as chemical bonds. In oxygen gas, in sodium chloride, and in water. The bond holding 2 atoms with opposite charges is known as an ionic bond, and the sharing of electrons between atoms are covalent bonds. 2 single covalent bonds in water and 1 double covalent bond in oxygen gas. Salt dissociates in the presence of water, or separates into sodium and chloride ions. The sodium ion is positively charged and known as a cation, and the chloride ion is negatively charged and is known as an anion. And in the presence of water form what are known as electrolytes. In the human body, these electrolytes are important in the way nerve cells function, muscle cells contract, and a number of other purposes. Water can dissociate as well into hydrogen and hydroxide ions. When these ions are equal to one another, we say this is neutral. When the number of hydrogen ions increase, it becomes acidic. Whereas when the number of hydroxide ions increase, basic. When these two ions are neutral in a substance, this is a part of buffer systems keeping these neutral. To clarify, the balancing of positively charged and negatively charged ions, such as hydrogen and hydroxide ions, is known as the buffer system. Where pure water is neutral, your stomach contents are acidic, whereas blood is basic. Covalent bonds between carbon atoms store energy and provide structure in molecules such as carbohydrates and proteins. Covalent bonds between hydrogen and oxygen, where electrons are shared unequally, create what's called a polar covalent bond and slightly positive and negative charges. These weak attractions cause what are known as hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds cause water molecules to stick together and also hold together molecules like amino acids in proteins and also DNA molecules. This gives water its properties of being charged, polar, and how it acts as a solvent where it can dissolve other substances. Water is also the most abundant compound and helps to moderate temperature. So far we've been looking at inorganic compounds. Organic compounds, what living organisms are made out of, contain carbon bonded to hydrogen atoms. The chemical reactions which put together and take apart organic compounds are known as dehydration synthesis reactions, or just synthesis reactions, or hydrolysis reactions, otherwise known as condensation reactions. Dehydration synthesis reactions take monomers, single part molecules, and build them into either dimers or a polymer, whereas hydrolysis reactions take a polymer or dimer and breaks it into monomers again, large molecules to small molecules. An example of a generic chemical equation for dehydration synthesis is A plus B plus C yields the polymer ABC plus 2 waters. With dehydration synthesis being water as products, the opposite is true of hydrolysis reactions. Water is added to A, B, and C to yield A plus B plus C monomers. Some examples of types of biological or organic compounds are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Some are part of the things that we eat for energy, others build structure of our bodies, and some have multiple purposes. Carbohydrates such as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides include examples such as glucose, sucrose, and starch. Examples of lipids are fats, steroids, and phospholipids, like what are present in cell membranes. Proteins may be made up of the 20 different types of amino acids, which combine to form a polypeptide, which are held together by peptide or covalent bonds to eventually form proteins if there are 100 or more. Nucleic acids are molecules made up of nucleotides and include substances like DNA and ATP. DNA is the molecule of inheritance, and ATP is the universal energy molecule.